I'm Gail Dorfman. I'm a board member of Fair Vote Minnesota and a former elected official who served St. Louis Park for 27 years as a council member, mayor, Hennepin County Commissioner, and Met Council member. And I have to say, when I was first elected, I was the only woman on the city council. And my children, my three children who attended St. Louis Park High School, at the schools at that time, 1% of their fellow students were kids of color. There are now 47% kids of color in our schools. And next January, when Larry and Nadia and Jake Spano are sworn in, there will be 4 women on the city council, a majority. Our community has certainly changed since I first got elected. Tom Friedman, the New York Times journalist who is a St. Louis Park native, as many of you may know, and he's also a strong ranked choice voting supporter. He wrote in his most recent book, Thank You for Being Late, about growing up in St. Louis Park. And he talked about the spirit of inclusion and civic idealism that existed then when he grew up in the 1960s and still exists now, the desire to accept and embrace change and to try new things, to be first. We like to be first in St. Louis Park. We were the first city in Minnesota to have curbside recycling. We had one of the first Spanish immersion programs in the schools. We were the first to try out and still champion the Children First initiative. We're the first to have one of the early livable community developments at Excelsior and Grand. And among other firsts that continue to this day, St. Louis Park was the first city in Minnesota to adopt ranked choice voting through a unanimous vote of the city council. And frankly, following the successful Fair Vote campaigns for ranked choice voting in Minneapolis and St. Paul, it was just natural to turn to St. Louis Park and the city council here and the Charter Commission and the community as we expanded ranked choice voting discussions around the state. And when we brought the notion and started to talk to people in this community, they ran with it. That brings us to the ranked choice voting election that we had for the first time in St. Louis Park this past Tuesday.